A newborn zebra foal, newly brought into the world, was left orphaned after his mother was taken by poachers, killed for her skin and meat. He was too small, too fragile, and almost certainly incapable of surviving on his own in the endless wilderness. This tragedy unfolded at the far edge of the reserve, where short green grass thinned into dust and scattered acacia trees offered only broken patches of shade. That was where Rafael found him. The tiny zebra foal stood alone, shaking, his narrow legs barely holding him upright against the vast open land. His small body cast a fragile shadow on the ground, almost disappearing into the brightness of the morning. There was no herd, no protective circle of moving stripes, only silence. And in that silence, something far heavier than hunger was already taking hold. Loneliness, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that quietly drains warmth from the body. And the will to stay. Rafael knelt beside him, careful not to startle the fragile life in front of him. The foal's breathing was uneven. His sides rose and fell too quickly, too shallow, as if every breath had to be negotiated. The rescue team tried what they always try: warmth, milk from a bottle, constant human care. But the foal turned his head away. Again and again, his mouth closed. His body resisted, not in panic, but in surrender. His thin legs trembled under his own weight. He could barely remain standing. If you've ever felt helpless in the face of immense loss, tap the like button to acknowledge this fragile life. Out here, stories like this usually end before anyone ever learns the animal's name. They fade quietly into statistics. But standing over that failing body, Rafael felt a terrifying truth settle inside him. If he followed the rules, this little zebra would not survive, which meant the only chance left was to break them. The first night was the hardest. As the sun collapsed behind the acacia line, the temperature dropped fast. The open land that had burned only hours earlier now carried a cold that crept into bone and breath. Rafael refused to leave. He sat near the enclosure, listening to the thin, uneven sounds of the zebra foal shifting in the dark. Every movement was uncertain. Every attempt to stand ended with shaking legs and a soft collapse back into the dust. The team worked in silence. They warmed water, wrapped small blankets, prepared formula again and again. They brought the bottle gently to the foal's mouth, and every time, he turned away, not with fear, not with resistance, but with the quiet refusal of something that no longer expected to be comforted. Hours passed, the stars climbed, and the foal's breathing grew lighter, thinner, as if his body was slowly forgetting the effort of staying. Rafael tried everything he knew. He adjusted the milk, changed the position, spoke softly, kept his hand near the foal's neck so it would feel less alone. Nothing reached him. By morning, the foal could no longer remain standing. He sank fully into the ground, sides fluttering, eyes half closed, his small body rising and falling like it was testing whether the next breath was worth taking. The medical team exchanged looks they did not want to speak out loud. This was not hunger anymore. This was something deeper. Animals like this don't die only from weakness. They die when they lose the reason to fight. Rafael stepped away, pressing his palms against his face. He had seen this before. Rescued animals who survived injuries, but not isolation. Creatures whose bodies healed, while something inside them quietly let go. And in that moment, a thought formed that frightened him more than the foal's condition. What if food was not what this baby needed? What if survival would require something no human could give? By the second night, Rafael had stopped pretending this was a normal rescue. The numbers on the medical chart no longer mattered. The foal's body was still there, but whatever had once pushed it forward was slipping away. Rafael walked alone along the outer edge of the sanctuary, where the enclosures sat farther apart and the older rescues were kept. Animals no one talked about anymore. Animals whose stories were already supposed to be over. That was where she lived. The old Lioness, once a dominant hunter of the plains, now a shadow of what she had been. Her massive frame carried the memory of battles, torn ears, faded scars, movements slower than instinct remembered. But it wasn't her body that had removed her from the wild. It was what she had lost. Years earlier, her cubs had died during a violent territorial conflict. Since then, something in her had gone quiet, not broken, dormant, unspent. Rafael stood at the barrier and watched her from a distance. She lay in the dust, eyes open, not sleeping, just staring, not at him, at nothing. And suddenly the thought he had been avoiding no longer felt accidental. What if survival didn't start in the stomach? What if it started somewhere older, deeper? He knew the biology. He knew the risks. Predator, prey, instinct. One mistake and the foal wouldn't suffer. He would disappear. But he also knew something else. Maternal chemistry does not recognize species. Under the right conditions, it recognizes distress, loss, need. And the old lioness had all three. Rafael called the senior staff together. The room went silent as he explained. A zebra foal, placed inside the outer boundary of a lioness's enclosure. No sedation, no physical contact, only distance and observation. Someone laughed in disbelief. Someone else swore. Another simply said, "That's suicide." Rafael didn't argue, because he knew. Doing nothing was already killing the foal. At dawn, they prepared the transport crate. The zebra foal barely lifted his head, barely responded to touch. Rafael's hands trembled as he secured the door. This was no longer rescue. This was a question being asked directly to nature, and the answer would not be gentle. If you believe some stories are worth the risk before you even know how they end, stay with us, subscribe, and witness what happened next. The gate slid open with a sound that felt far too loud. Metal against metal. Final. Rafael stood frozen as the transport crate was eased forward, inch by inch, into the outer boundary of the old lioness's enclosure. On the far side, she lifted her head. Slowly, the muscles along her shoulders tightened beneath weathered skin. Dust drifted from her coat as she rose, the weight of her body settling into the ground like memory. Every instinct in the human body says to step back from a predator. Rafael did not move. The zebra foal shifted inside the crate. A thin, trembling sound escaped his throat. Not a cry, something smaller. The lioness took one step, then another, each one deliberate, measured, closing a distance that no rulebook ever imagined. The world narrowed to a few meters of dust between them. No wind, no birds, no voices. Even the radio on Rafael's shoulder had gone silent. The lioness stopped, her head lowered, not with tension, not with hunger, but with something searching. Her nostrils flared as she drew in the foal's scent. Slow, deep, the kind of breath an animal takes when it is not deciding what to do, but remembering. The foal pressed weakly against the crate wall. Then, with a movement that surprised even him, he leaned forward, toward her, toward the only warmth in his world. The latch was released, the door eased open, and nothing happened. No sudden strike, no explosion of motion, only two beings standing where nature said they should never meet. The foal stumbled out, one step, almost fell, corrected, then another. Every human present had forgotten how to breathe. The lioness did not bare her teeth. She did not circle. She lowered herself to the ground, her massive frame folding, not coiling, lowering her head to the level of the trembling newborn. She leaned forward and gently touched her nose to his. For a moment that stretched beyond time, the savannah waited. Then the lioness exhaled, a long, low breath, not a growl, not a warning. A sound that vibrated through the ground like something ancient being set down. The first contact was over, and against every law written into bone, it had not ended in blood. No one stepped forward. No one spoke. For a long moment, even Rafael remained exactly where he was, as if any sound might fracture what had just begun. The lioness stayed low, not guarding, not stalking, simply present. The zebra foal swayed where he stood, confusion passing through his small body in uneven waves. His legs folded, and he sank gently into the dust. The lioness shifted, slowly, She turned her massive body and lowered herself beside him, close enough for warmth but not touching. Yet, the foal leaned, not away, toward her. His narrow side pressed into the rise and fall of her breathing, and for the first time since Rafael had found him, the foal did not tremble. Minutes passed, then more. The lioness did not move. Flies settled, dust drifted, and the foal slept, curled against a predator's chest. From that moment on, something invisible reorganized the space between them. The lioness began positioning herself between the foal and everything else. The fence, the wind, the humans. When the sun climbed too high, she adjusted her body so her shadow fell across him. When sudden noises cracked across the reserve, she placed her head over his back, not in threat, but in shelter. Rafael watched from the boundary, notebook forgotten in his hand. This was not tolerance. It was orientation. Every movement now took the foal into account. Every rest was chosen around him. And slowly, impossibly, the foal began to respond. He drank small amounts from the bottle when it was offered near her. He stood longer. He pressed himself into her side when exhaustion came. The lioness allowed it, all of it. She did not correct him, did not push him away. She simply remained, the way mothers do. What was forming in front of them did not have a name. It had no place in manuals, no category in nature documentaries. But it was real, and it was growing. Weeks passed, then months. The change did not arrive suddenly. It unfolded, quietly. The zebra foal's legs no longer folded beneath him. They stretched. They learned. They carried him farther each day. His coat grew brighter, his steps steadier, his breath deeper. And always, the lioness was there. At rest, he slept pressed against her side. At feeding, he stayed close enough that her warmth never left his skin. When he wandered, he circled back. Not to the fence, not to the humans, to her. But as the foal grew, so did the silence around Rafael's work. What had once looked like survival now looked like delay. The foal no longer needed only warmth. He needed movement, mirrors, others like him. He needed the language of hooves and flight and collective memory, things a lioness could not teach. Rafael began introducing new elements, scent trails from other zebras, distant recordings of herd calls, visual contact through secondary fencing. The foal reacted poorly. He startled, he turned, he retreated, always back to the same place. The lioness's shadow, her body, her presence. And the lioness changed too. She began watching the horizon longer. Her meals slowed. Her rest grew lighter. She followed the foal's movements with a focus that felt less like protection and more like preparation. Rafael recognized the signs. Attachment in animals does not end gently. It announces itself in the body, in appetite, in stillness, in the way something is already beginning to let go before it is taken. He stood one evening at the enclosure's edge as the foal rested beneath the lioness's jaw, her breathing rising and falling around his small form. And for the first time since the rescue began, Rafael did not feel hope. He felt timing, and timing was turning against them. The morning it happened did not feel different. There was no warning in the sky, no shift in the wind, no sense that anything final had arrived. The zebra foal woke the way he always did, pressed against the lioness's chest, curled beneath the heavy rise and fall of her breathing. For a moment, everything was exactly as it had been for months. Then Rafael stepped into the enclosure, and the day changed. The transport team followed behind him, slower than usual, quieter, their movements careful in a way that had nothing to do with safety. They did not carry medical equipment, they carried distance. Rafael stopped several meters away. He did not speak at first. He watched. The foal lifted his head, blinking. Then he stood, and instinctively, he moved closer to the lioness, brushing his side against her leg, waiting. The lioness did not shift, but her eyes opened wider. She had already felt it. Animals often do. The air does not need words. Rafael raised his hand. The team approached, slowly. Each step measured, not to avoid attack, but to avoid breaking something fragile that could not be repaired. The foal stepped back once, then again, confused. He looked at Rafael, then at the lioness, then back again. The world he knew had always fit inside that triangle. Warmth, presence, stillness. Now something unfamiliar was entering it. A barrier was moved, a path was opened. The foal hesitated, his ears flicked, his breathing sharpened. He made a small sound in his throat. Not fear, not pain, recognition. The lioness rose, not quickly, not defensively. She stood the way mountains stand, without urgency, without question. Her body positioned itself between the foal and the humans, not to threaten, but to hold. Rafael stopped the team. He lifted one finger. Wait. Minutes passed. No one moved. The foal pressed into the lioness's chest, his small head tucked beneath her jaw, the place he always went when the world grew too large. The lioness lowered her head and rested it over his back. Her breath slowed, deepened, and something in her posture changed. Not toward aggression, toward gravity, the kind that comes before release. Rafael's voice was quiet when he finally spoke. Open the outer gate. The mechanism responded with a low sound that rolled across the enclosure. The foal startled. He stepped forward, then back, then forward again. The opening beyond the barrier revealed space he had never entered. Long, wide, unmarked by the lioness's body. The lioness did not block him. She did not guide him. She did not follow. She remained where she was, still, watching. The foal took one uncertain step, then another, each movement slower than the last. He stopped, turned, looked back at her. The lioness met his eyes. She did not move toward him. She did not call. She did not lie down. She simply remained. And in that stillness was something heavier than any restraint, permission. The foal walked. It was not a straight line. He drifted, paused, returned, then forced himself forward again. Rafael's hands were clenched at his sides. He did not gesture. He did not rush. He did not interfere with what did not belong to him. Behind him, no one spoke. The foal crossed the threshold. The space between him and the lioness expanded. 1 meter, then 3, then more. He stopped again, his chest rising and falling too quickly. He turned his head and made a sound that no one there had heard from him before. Not a distress call, not a hunger sound. Something thin, something breaking. The lioness answered, not with a roar, not with a call. She exhaled, a long, controlled breath that carried across the ground like a low tide. The foal stood still, then he lowered his head, just slightly, as if setting something down. The gate behind him closed, not loudly, not ceremonially. It closed the way endings often do, softly, without permission. The foal did not run. He did not resist. He stood, and then he walked on. The lioness remained. She did not follow the fence line. She did not pace. She did not lie down. She stayed exactly where the foal had last been warm. Rafael did not approach her. He knew better. Some moments are not meant to be comforted. They are meant to be witnessed. The sun moved. The dust settled. The enclosure slowly filled again with ordinary sounds. But the lioness did not. She stood, motionless, a living monument to something that had existed and had now been given away. For the foal's sake. Time did what it always does. It moved forward. Quietly. Indifferently. The space beside the old lioness no longer held a small striped body. The dust where he had once slept was disturbed only by wind. Days passed, then seasons. The reserve changed colors. The acacia bloomed, withered, bloomed again, and the lioness aged. Her steps shortened. Her rest grew longer. The sharp gold in her coat softened into pale earth tones. Most days, she lay near the far boundary of her enclosure, beneath the thin shade of the same trees she had watched for years. A quiet figure, neither waiting nor forgetting. Rafael visited when he could. Sometimes he stood by the fence. Sometimes he only watched from a distance. He never brought the foal's scent, never played recorded calls. Some things are not meant to be summoned. They are meant to arrive. And one morning, something did. The sound came before the shape, low, resonant, carried across the land not as noise, but as presence. Rafael froze. So did the staff, because that sound did not belong to the sanctuary. It belonged to open plains, to movement, to weight. A deep, rolling call rose again, vibrating through the fence lines and into the ground. The lioness lifted her head, slowly, not startled, not confused, as if she had been waiting for a word she had always known. At the distant edge of the reserve, beyond the outer barriers, a figure emerged. Tall, broad, striped not in the soft patterns of youth, but in the bold, defined lines of maturity. A zebra, no longer a foal, not yet fully grown, but powerful, steady. He moved forward several steps, then stopped. He did not approach the humans. He did not scan the fences. He raised his head and called again, not loudly, precisely. The lioness rose. Her body no longer carried the speed it once had, but it carried something else. Certainty. She walked toward the boundary, not hurried, not hesitant, each step placed with the confidence of memory. The zebra approached from the other side. When they reached the fence line, neither pressed against it at first. They stood, separated by wire, by time, by everything that was supposed to make this impossible. The zebra lowered his head, extended his muzzle toward the metal. Slowly, carefully. The lioness stepped closer, until her face was only centimeters from his. She breathed in, deeply, the same way she had once breathed in the scent of a trembling newborn. The zebra exhaled, a long, controlled breath, and in that moment, something passed between them that no camera could record. Recognition, not of form, not of species, of presence. The zebra leaned forward and brushed his muzzle against the fence. The lioness tilted her head and rested it against the metal, not trying to cross, not trying to reach, only answering. Rafael felt his chest tighten because he understood. This was not a visit. This was not curiosity. This was return. The zebra did not stay long. He stood, he breathed, he watched. Then, slowly, he stepped back. Once, then again. He did not turn away. He did not rush. He simply widened the space between them, the way something does when it has already completed what it came to say. The lioness remained at the fence. Long after the stripes had faded back into the light, she did not pace, she did not call, she did not lie down. She stayed, as if holding the shape of something that no longer needed to be held. Rafael did not speak. None of them did, because some endings are not meant to close. They are meant to remain open. This story was never about a predator and a prey animal. It was never about rescue. It was not even about survival. It was about what happens when one living being recognizes the need of another and answers it without benefit, without guarantee, without reason. It was about the quiet truth that family is not always born. Sometimes it is chosen, and sometimes it is remembered, across distance, across time, across species. If stories like this matter to you, stories that remind us what compassion can look like when no one is watching, then don't let them disappear. Subscribe to the channel, share this story, and stay with us for the next one, because some connections do not end. They simply continue, one breath at a time.